Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Collectorcast, episode 106. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
And I'm Sid Gill.
Yo.
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 Did the 90s call?
Yes. I'm going all
tough?
retro. I was watching, I went down a YouTube rabbit hole the other night, actually. Laura and I got back from the pub. And actually from a meal out, and we decided, well, it's far too early to go to bed. Let's put on some music and carry on boozing. So we did, and we ended up down basically a 90s dance rabbit hole. So there were classics like The Real McCoy, Two Unlimited, even a bit of Vanilla Ice.
Dear gods.
It was great. I have finally caved and decided, I need to do some exercise.
Finally caved. This is Andy finally caved.
Actually, this has been quite a long time coming because, as you are aware, the establishment in which I work are keen cyclists. And they keep anyone who sort of starts working there is... They try to indoctrinate them into their sort of their club of cycling, because living in the Malverns, obviously there's a lot of off-road biking and stuff, and they've been trying to get me to join for many years until I resisted too much and they gave up. But since lockdown started, I have been a lazy fat bastard and have put on about 2 stone, and I've decided enough is enough. So I have bought a bike. Eventually,
right.
I've now bought a bike.
I'd like to point out to the listeners that at this point, as you were saying you become a fat bastard and bought a bike, Sid is troughing a giant piece of chocolate cake.
I was feeling slightly guilty, and I thought, no, okay, I don't care. I'm fat and embracing it.
I was also considering that, but I thought, no, I need to lose some weight. I'm unfit. It's disgraceful. So I have acquired, in fact, last night, as we record this podcast, this is a Tuesday, the 2nd, on Monday, the 1st of November, I went over to Halfords, having browsed a few things online whilst I was at work.
You know that this isn't secret, right?
No, I know. I'm aware of that. It's okay.
So when the tribunal comes out and PHC is Exhibit
right.
C.
Here we go. This is why Andy hasn't achieved his goals this month. Yes, I know. I'm aware of that. And I found one of the bikes I'd had my eye on for a little while, based on reviews and the kind of in-depth, anally retentive research that we all do, because we are that kind of people and we want to know exactly what the parts are and all the reviews and that kind of approach that we usually take, Sid.
Yeah, PowerPoint presentation with graphs
say, was a
and
spreadsheet
spreadsheets.
involved?
Yeah.
Not quite, but not far off.
Did you whiteboard it? Did you have a Venn diagram?
I had made some electronic notes in the background over the last few weeks whilst I was browsing a few models, yes.
There you go. Pros and cons analysis.
Exactly, pretty much, yes. I'd even saved all the hyperlinks to all of the reviews. But anyway, this thing came in stock, and I thought, right, I'm pulling the trigger. So I did. And later on last night, because Halfords doesn't shut till 8 o'clock, which is quite convenient, and it's only 10 minutes drive up the road, so off I went. Foolishly in the BMW, picked up this bloody great trials bike, which would not fit into said BMW, so I had to come all the way home again and take the iGo so I could shove it into the back. But I am now the owner of a fully suspension trial bike, and I have to say it's quite marvellous. I've taken it round our estate a couple of times. It's like being you can get a bike Christmas morning. You've got to get your parents to watch it and go cycling around the drive. But I've gone round the estate on it, and as you two know, you've been to my house. Our house is on a small incline. And I have been out twice today, once before work and once at lunchtime, for about 5 minutes ago, just going round the estate, up and down the hills, and I came back, I've done one lap, and I was breathing through my arse. I was absolutely humped. Oh my God, that was hard. My body's not used to moving, it's not good. But I thought, well, with the forest right on my doorstep, almost literally, I thought, well, it's too good an opportunity to miss. Get an off-road bike and go and enjoy myself in the mud. But yes, there's my new toy. It's very nice. And it makes some of my all-in pledges look quite cheap.
Oh dear. Well, let's talk about some possible future all-in pledges then, shall we?
Yes, that is a great idea.
We've got a big announcement from Garp Hill Games. Now, everyone should know we're a fan of Garphill Games. We're a fan of the West Kingdom series especially. So there's been the North series, which has all been Viking-based, the West Kingdom series, which has all been kind of knights and paladins and churches and stuff. And there are going to be 2 more trilogies, the South and the East. And Garphill Games have announced the titles of all 3 of the South Tigris trilogy. So Wayfarers of the South Tigris, Scholars of the South Tigris, and Inventors of the South Tigris. And to put your wallet to ease slightly, it's been announced that each one of them is coming out a year apart. So it's 2022 for Wayfarers, 23 for Scholars, and 2024 for Inventors. The other good news is they're anticipating there will, of course, be expansions for these, so they're going to come in a big box from the start.
Hurrah.
Rather than the wee boxes, and then you having to buy a second box later on down the line.
Environmentalism is important.
Well, it is, because it is a bit of a weird situation they did with West Kingdom, where they obviously intended to do as expansions quite early on, and yet, Paladins is the one that really sticks out as barely fits in the base box anyway.
Yes, God, yes. You have to be pretty good at what's that game?
Tetris.
Tetris is one, but I'm thinking of something else. What the hell is it called? Oh, it's a Bedlam cube. So it's basically lots of 3D shapes you've got to get back in a cube, and it never fits. There's always one wee bit sticking out. One of them. You've got to be good at that to play Paladins. But yeah, then the expansion comes out, and it barely fits in that. With a big box, it's insane.
So we have no idea what these games are going to be like, what the mechanics are going to be like, but I expect some workers, some placing, and some cards.
And some very familiar iconography, I'd imagine, as well.
Yes, I can imagine that as well.
Indeed. And probably at least 2 expansions per game, so...
Seems to be the way forward with them, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, Garphill have probably secured their business for the next few years, certainly.
Well, I think you were saying earlier, if you think they've already announced they're going to be an East trilogy as well, if they do that for another 3 years, that takes them all the way up to 2027.
At least.
So
yeah, plus all the expansions. So yeah, I reckon they've got a good 10 years in them yet, just on the back of these 4 series. And then whatever happens next. So yes, I think, they're running a good show over at Garphill.
I think so. I've not been unimpressed, but I mean, I know some people say some of the North Sea games are a bit lacking. But I've been impressed with everyone I've played so far, but I haven't played 2 of the North Sea games.
Yes,
the Shipwrights and Explorers.
That's the ones, yeah, because you've played...
played Raiders.
Raiders, that's the one. Yeah, I was going to say Invaders, but no, Raiders. You played that at here, didn't you?
Yeah. And I know we haven't talked about it, but I played Adrian's Wall as well. I'm very impressed by that. It's very different, but and you can see why it's not part of one of the West Kingdom, the North, South, East, West series, but it's a very well put together game as well.
Excellent. Yeah, no, they're pretty reliable, I think, Garphill. Is that the word I would use is reliable. Speaking of expansions, or at least, these are speculated expansions, but the Artisans of Nicaragua, now this is not a new expansion in any way, shape or form. So this is an expansion for 5 tribes by Bruno Cathala and... is it Days of Wonder? No, it's not Days of Wonder.
Yes, Days of Wonder.
It is Days of Wonder. Artisans of Nicaragua is universally accepted as a very good expansion for 5 tribes, but it has been like rocking horse shit to get hold of a copy in the last few years. Until now, it has just been reprinted and it is available again. So if you are a fan of 5 tribes, we do recommend you get Artisans. Unfortunately, however, it is not available in the US for some reason. Probably to do with shipping, I guess, but I don't know. But it is available over here in the UK and in the EU. So our copy arrived yesterday, and we played it last night, in fact. The same night I received my bike. So lots of stuff was delivered to our house yesterday. So I sat there playing a game going, oh, no, my bike. And Laura won at that one as well. So
Of course you did. I can't win that game. Amanda's too good at that.
Yeah. I'll play it, but I know I'm going to lose. But it is a good game. That's the thing. 5 Tribes is quite a reliable game.
So Sid, you've been excited by a mucky calendar.
I'm always excited by a mucky calendar, Steve. You know me.
But this is tangentially gaming related.
You know what? I was surprised it was gaming related. But I was
surprised and somewhat disappointed. It sounds. Are you going to lower the tone of this podcast, Mr. Gill?
Well, considerably, yes. I think I am. No, this is a YouTuber, Ginny D. I think a few of us have seen some of her stuff. She does quite a lot of D&D stuff on YouTube and does a lot of cosplay and whatnot. But last year, I think during lockdown, she did a pin-up calendar, kind of D&D cosplay kind of pin-up calendar. Quite a nice idea. But she's done another one, and it's open for pre-orders. And it's quite nice. It's probably the politest way I could put it. It has
Does it tick the right boxes? Should we put it that way?
Well, here's the thing, right? I am quite a fan of the pin-up art style, right? You know, the old Memphis Belle classic 40s girl riding a bomb, right? That kind of style of artwork I find quite impressive. And it's that kind of style of calendar. It's just the right side of classy with a hint of muck.
Just looking at it now, it's got. Is it right in thinking it's got a D&D adventure of it called Bard Behind Bars?
It does indeed. If you go deluxe for a whole $40, you get that adventure in there as well. I mean, it's a bit of fun. It's quite nice. You know what? I haven't had a calendar in a while, but I'm seriously thinking of dropping $40 on this one.
So what's it called again? Sorry,
Ginny D's pin-up. Oh no, it's called Natural 22, I think.
Outstanding.
There we go. Other news at the moment is it's Kickstarter Tuesday.
It is.
Now, for those that don't realise this, there was some research done a few years back that basically said the Kickstarters launched on a Tuesday have the highest success rate. So that basically meant that everyone now launches their Kickstarters on a Tuesday. And it's got a bit mental.
Yes, it has.
So I'm eyeing up the Mothership RPG on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm eyeing up the Modifius Skyrim adventure board game.
I was going to ask if you'd seen and or dipped your little toe into this one.
Yeah, I'm eyeing it up. It does look right up my
back passage.
Yeah, snow-filled valley.
Well, Mothership is doing incredibly well.
It is, yes.
It is. Has it broken 400k yet? Because it was about 390 when I looked about an hour ago.
Was it? I think it's close to that. So that's on Kickstarter, isn't it? That's
on
a
Kickstarter.
Horror RPG. That's a horror RPG, which a lot of people say is similar to Alien, because a lot of people say if you're playing Alien, you can basically rip off some of the Mothership adventures for it as well. I believe it's a smidge lighter in its rules.
It's very rules light. It's actually one that has got me quite. I think I said to you guys earlier, hot and bothered. And
yes.
Had I not had IT issues today, I would have ordered it before I joined the chat tonight. But it is.
Is this going to be post-cast ordering?
I'm getting it today because it'll be too late for other people. Order it today, and you get a little mission patch for your bomber jacket, boys. It's quite cool. It's a big thing. They have a big thing about mission patches in Tuesday Night Games, who are publishing Mothership, and every previous Kickstarter has come with a exclusive mission patch and things like that. But the stretch goals they're smashing through the stretch goals right now. It's a lovely little box. I think it's up our street, boys. I really do.
I can't, for reasons I am now about to explain.
Go on then, go for the rest of the list then, Andy.
Right.
So just to reiterate, Mothership's on Kickstarter, Skyrim is on GameFound, and just to say that is a adventure style game, so you can go around the board doing quests, like a pick 'em deliver style from what I've seen, and it's also got that kind of Fallout numbered deck thing to it, whereby you do quests and there's like hundreds of quests that have different outcomes which can change the board. I'm very intrigued by it. I'm just put off by the overall price. If you want everything, it's £220, which...
that's cheap.
Well, Andy, go on and tell us the rest then.
To be honest, I'm very keen on you getting Skyrim as well. I think you should do it and go full Andy. I'm looking at and interested in, because I've mentioned in the past the company called Final Frontier Games. They have done a series of games called the Five Kingdoms games. So I've mentioned Cavern Tavern, Merchant's Cove, which we haven't talked about yet because you two haven't played it. There's another game called Rise to Nobility, which is the second game in the series. And they're generally sort of Euro-y style games, and they're all their artwork's done by Namiko. So it's all got this sort of very familiar artwork. He does a lot of the artwork for Garphill Games as well, so it's that kind of artwork. And that's Bardwood Grove, which I think is the 5th game in the Five Kingdoms series now. I don't think it's going to be limited to 5, because unlike Garphill, they're not like set in one in each kingdom. I think they're just set in 5 realms, rather, not for 5 kingdoms. But anyway, Bardwood Grove, another Euro, looks pretty good. I'm backing that because I'm in with Final Frontier now, because I've got 3 or 4 of them, so I thought, well, why not? Obviously, one of the big ones at the moment is Lords of Ragnarok. You've probably seen adverts and various other bits and bobs. Bardwood Grove's on Kickstarter, by the way. Lords of Ragnarok, Awakened Realms, so they're obviously using their own GameFound, which is their own system here. That's doing very, very well. It's currently made over €1 million, obviously, and I think there's probably about a week or so left of the campaign as you hear this podcast.
To be fair, £1,000 a box, it's not hard to hit 1 million, is it?
It's not 1,000. See, it's weird. I still think it is actually curiously cheap, because for everything, for a completely balls deep, all-in pledge, it's about €170, which for an Awakened Realms game is not much.
Sid's getting confused with the other one.
Yes,
You're about
he
to
is.
talk about.
Oh,
yes,
am I? Yes, I am. Yes, I
you are.
apologise. Yes, you're quite right.
So Lords of Ragnarok is obviously very heavy miniatures. It's going to be very, very similar in appearance and style to Lords of Hellas, which was released a few years ago, which is based on ancient Greek. So Ragnarok obviously is going to be Viking based and does look pretty good. Obviously, I'm backing that one. The next one is from Chip Theory Games, which is Too Many Bones Unbreakable. So this is the 3rd Expandalone. I think I mentioned on the last cast. This is still on GameFound, weirdly, not Kickstarter, as they've done everything else on Kickstarter. But that's got, I think, another week or so to go as well, because Lords for Ragnarok and Too Many Bones basically kicked off about the same time. And that's made over €2 million. Possibly because they are offering this is everything we've done for Too Many Bones, and it's about £900. I don't think there's that many takers for that, but there have been a few people interested. But I mean, that is a lot of stuff for Too Many Bones. There is an awful lot of stuff in that package. But they did drop the price from something like £1,100 or £1,200, so that's pretty good, actually. For what you get, it's pretty good value, but it is a lot of money.
Practically giving it away at that point, mate, aren't they?
Well, to be fair, it's about 5 or 6 years worth of stuff. It's not all.
I mean,
stuff.
it is a very nice set of stuff as well.
It's wonderful, yes. But yeah, so this actual expansion is about, if you buy everything that's coming out now, so all the new stuff, basically it's about €220, and you get 3 or 4 additional characters and the expansion, and a bunch of.
Does it fit in the box though?
Into the trove chest, it better fucking have to.
Am I going to be proven right? I'm going to be proven right. I can't.
No,
wait.
I'm going to make it fit. It's going to fit.
Yeah, just because you want me to shut up, that's why.
I do, yeah. So obviously I'm backing that because I really like Too Many Bones. Steve likes Too Many Bones, so I'm sure he's going to be keen on playing that as well. And I'm pretty sure you like it as well, Sid. So it's a great, I would say, little game, but obviously there's quite a lot going on there. Mythic Games have got another game coming out called Monster Apocalypse. If you like miniatures and battling, and it looks a bit more like sort of King Kong and Pacific Rim style combat-y type stuff.
Mythic Games are doing Monster Apocalypse.
Mythic Games?
Oh.
I think it's Mythic.
Monster Apocalypse is an old game. That's very weird, because Monster Apocalypse is a game by... it looks like the same game. It's the same game with the same miniatures. So Privateer Press made this game ages ago. I think it's like a 10, 15-year-old game now.
So they're redoing it.
They're redoing it, yeah.
There you go.
Interesting. So yeah, this game is... Pacific Rim is the best. It was Pacific Rim before Pacific Rim came out.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
I was about to say it's kind of Godzilla, Pacific Rim. Yeah.
Kaijus versus robots versus different kinds of kaijus or army
versus buildings.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
So yes. So if you like big miniatures, big games, combat and destruction, that is a game probably for you. I'm not particularly interested in it myself, but it does look quite impressive.
The other week, we had a little play of Destinies from Lucky Duck Games. Now, I played this game a couple of times solo, and this was the first time I played it multiplayer with you guys. And in its intended form, it is a multiplayer game in which the best way to describe it would be imagine Mansions of Madness, but instead of it being a cooperative game, it's a competitive game. So it is a fantasy well, I say fantasy-ish, mainly medieval fantasy, and less on the magic, more on the medieval. RPG-style game where you take a bunch of characters and you'll lay out a map of your surroundings, and you will have an app with you to explain some of the actions you can take. And you can explore that area and do lots of things around it. Basically involves going to places and exploring locations. To actually do your kind of RPG aspect of it, you've got a simple dice mechanic. Well, I say simple, it's actually really hard to explain without something in front of you to show it. You've got a character sheet with 3 different stats on there, which I think are basically strength, wits, and magic. But I think it might be strength, wits, and law. And you have a series of wooden dots in different holes which represent skill levels. And what you're trying to do is on the dice, you roll the dice, and every pip you go above on these tracks is how many successes you get. So if you've got a pip at like 4 and 6 and you roll a 6, then you've got 2 successes. But if you roll a 5, you don't have 1 success. Now the beauty about this game is you always roll 2 dice, which are the big chunky dice, but you have 3 bonus dice you can use. But whenever you roll those dice, they're exhausted, so they're put to one side. And you have to wait for them to refresh, which is usually like items or places you can go which can help you refresh those dice, and you refresh one every round. So there's a little bit of a resource management there in what you can do with stuff. You've also got, of course, it's an RPG, you've got items like healing potions and things like that which can be spent to boost some stats. But the basic gist of the game is you've got 2 missions. And that's what I've really liked about this. But you don't know what your mission is, because it's not your mission, it's your destiny. And what you have to do is you have to work out what your destiny is and how to solve it. And you do that by going around the map, speaking to people, investigating things. But when you want to ask someone about your destiny, you've got a little QR code on the card, which is your character card, and you have to scan it on your phone or your iPad, which gets that character to tell you bits about it. And other items work like that. So, for instance, you may meet someone, for instance, who is trying to look for a horse. And if you've got the horse card, you have to scan the QR code to say, it says, can you use this item? Scan the QR code. So if you've played any of Lucky Duck's Chronicles of Crime games, you'll understand how that part of it works. And if you've played Mansions of Madness, you'll understand basically how the basic game works. It is move, explore, take some actions, and the actions are skill tests, which you do on the screen. Of course, it's all app-based. So it's all got sound effects and music and a well-spoken English accent telling you your quest at the start.
That's very good.
Which is kind of seems to be the order of the day for these kind of things. And what I really like about it is it is competitive, which makes it quite interesting because a lot of these games so far have always been cooperative and storytelling. So you don't know which way the story is going to go, because the actions of the player will decide the events that happen. So in this one, in the first quest in the main box, you're basically chasing a werewolf. And what you do, you might be hunting the werewolf, you might be trying to stop the curse, you might be trying to save villagers. What you do will actually shift things, and you have to keep your eye out on what's happening because everyone's got similar destinies. So when someone does something, you might want to keep an eye on what items are happening where, so you can run over and try and grab it, for instance. Like, for instance, my character was after ritual items. So when someone dropped one, well, I had to cheese it over across the board, try and get it before someone else picked it up. I've played a bit more of it single player, solo, and I've got to admit, solo, it's bloody hard because you're not working against someone else, you're working against the clock. So it feels more like Mansions of Madness, that, in that you've got a time limit you've got to go up against, and dear God, solo is difficult because you have to really get a shift on. You have to be really laser focused and go straight to where your quest is supposed to be taking you and get the damn thing done. In the main box, there are 4 quests, and there are 2 expansions out for it, which give you even more quests. And I think there's a bit of subtlety in that the different quests can play out differently depending on what the players do. But I don't know what that full effect is yet because I haven't gone through it like multiple times to see what differences there may be. But I'm a bit concerned it's maybe not as replayable as, say, Mansions of Madness is, where Mansions of Madness really does mix things up. I don't feel it's got that kind of level of mix-up ability, if that makes sense.
No, I'd agree with that because I felt with the 3 of us on the map we played, I think we'd seen pretty much all that map had to offer. And
yes.
I also get the impression, unlike Mansions, if you've got an expansion or 2, it doesn't change the map.
No, the map is set, and you can tell the map was set because the artwork is very much set.
Exactly.
That was that map of that village, which it joined up to make that map. In the same way, if anyone's played like Tainted Grail, it felt a little bit like that, but joining up more. What's more neatly, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, I agree. But yeah, it does kind of make it like a one shot, which is a shame. Because I like the idea of it, the mechanics of the tests and how you can improve yourself. I really liked that. That was quite nice because you had a lot of flexibility about your own character development there, and you weren't fixed. Because in some cases you could sacrifice one skill in favour of a couple of others, which was quite nice as well. And the fairly aggressive inventory system actually was pretty good as well.
Yeah,
because it made you actually think about what you were doing. It made you. You had to make decisions with consequences, basically. Do I drop the sword, because I might be able to use it to stab something in future, or do I drop this item, which I know damn well Steve wants, so it's going to help him? So that was quite nice as well. But yeah, I think it was a little limited compared to Mansions, although I do have all of Mansions expansions, so I am possibly slightly biased in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's a considerably cheaper game than Mansions.
It is. I remember because the base cost of Mansions now is about £100, isn't it? After we talked about it last week. I mean, I got it for a bit less than that, but even then, Destinies is only about £40 for the box.
Yeah,
that's not bad actually, considering what's in the box. It's very nice.
I mean, what did we got? What, 2 hours play out of it? An hour and a half play out of that first mission?
It's about 2 hours play out of that first mission. Yeah.
So 10 hours of play for £40 for three people, I think it is maximum it plays. Is it? That's not bad.
And then I said you can go back and explore it and try and do the different quests, or you can go back and explore it solo to try and explore some different options.
Everybody had 2 Destinies. I like that. So that gave you choices. And, so just because I started off on one Destiny and then halfway through it's like, this isn't going anywhere. I'm fumbling around the dark on this one. I was able to change onto the other one quite seamlessly. And so there is some replayability in it, and I think there's bits, Andy, that your character missed. There was a few unexplored locations, if I remember correctly, that we just didn't play through, and a couple of bad rolls trying to break into a place, those kind of things.
Yeah, we're sort of trying to talk my way past the mopey guard who won't let me in. Cheer up, mate. Your turn ends. God damn it. Yeah.
But I think the way it played with the app, I think really, for me, did add the app, I thought. The voiceover and the little bit of kind of mood setting with the locations where you went and all that kind of stuff, and it did add a certain amount of kind of uncertainty almost. Like you'd click on one option, and go, is that me? I'm going to get another go here or not? Should I burn my 3, whatever they call the extra dice or not? If I burn them all now, I might have to do another one later. And no, I thought it was quite a fun wee game.
Agreed.
No,
I
really
enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. It was fun, and the unfolding. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good story. So the unfolding story as the character progresses, and you prod on different things, is all good. And also knowing that you've screwed over one of your opponents is also very satisfying. Don't give that horse to him. I need it. Unlucky.
I think also with the app, it meant that we were all able to engage with it together. So nobody had to kind of take the seat of games master or whatever the hell you want to call them. It allowed us, 3 of us to play on an equal footing together, which was nice.
You also didn't have that thing of sometimes you have this kind of game as a story and someone has a story card and they don't read the card out. Yeah. Because the story cards are all in front of you where you can all read it. As you said, you've all got more open information about what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, it just felt more immersive, I thought, rather than, we were in it together fighting each other and we all had the same information with which to work.
I have one complaint about the game. It's a really weird one. So you've got the board is actually made up of cards, and they're square cards, and what they have is the kind of the full art side, and then you have like a grayed out side, which is like the unexplored side. So what you do is when you explore a new area, you turn over the card you're exploring, and then you put the grayed out cards around it, around your north, south, east, west compass points. Then the app tells you what's there, what points of interest are there. You might be a church, there might be a pub, there might be an old temple or something like that. But then it will tell you what people are of interest. And there are miniatures for this. And there are miniatures for your players as well. However, the miniature is about the size of my little fingernail. They're about 10 to 12 millimeters tall. And finding these and working out which one's which on the table is an absolute bugger. Because in a normal game, you think even at arm's reach, you can barely tell these miniatures apart at arm's reach.
True.
So I couldn't look at the board and see where I was. I had to just remember where I was from the last turn because these miniatures were they just turned into a grey little thimble, basically, from my eyesight. And the weird thing is I don't think I'd want big miniatures.
No, they'd obscure the map too much because the map tiles are only, 2 or 3 inches square?
They're the size
big
of
coasters,
like a
yeah.
Yeah.
A CD size almost, just maybe a bit like a
Less
square
than that.
CD.
I think beer mat size.
Probably less. Beer mat size?
Yeah, they're about a beer mat size, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, it was only one complaint I had because the miniatures are beautifully detailed and they're all like unique. But the problem is by the time it's across, in the middle of the table, it was a bit kind of like...
Well, get them painted, Tudor. Come on, chop.
Well, actually, you know what? Now that you point it out, that's even worse because we needed the TV. So my previous comment about how good it was to have the app and we threw it onto your TV, because we were watching your TV at the same time, we all sat a bit further back, I think, from the table. Whereas maybe if we'd done it on like a tablet right in front of us,
maybe we'd been a bit
we'd all be
closer.
kind of hunched closer or something.
Almost certainly, yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, so what I did is I've got actually specifically bought a second-hand Apple TV so I could basically screencast from my iPad to an old TV I've got in the dining room next to the gaming table. So it's really useful for that because it puts it on the big screen, you've got speakers, you've got decent sound quality rather than trying to squeeze it out of an iPad speaker.
That's true. And it's nice and big for those of us going blind and old.
Yes. Those are old and poor eyesight.
Blind, deaf, all the rest of it. But yeah.
Yes, no, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and yeah, for 40 quid, I think it's probably worth it. It's there's a lot of, but yeah, again, don't be under the impression you'll get lots of plays out of it because I think it's very, very much one shot.
What age is it pitched at, Steve?
I would have thought based on the size of those things, it's 14.
Yeah,
because then it doesn't fall under toys. Basically, if you see a board game and it says it's aged at 14 or more. It's not because that's what they reckon the age of the user is. It's because at that point it stops being a toy. So you don't have to get the CE marking for a toy.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lot easier to sell.
It's very true.
So I have a funny feeling it's probably age 14 plus. So it's probably just that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that complicated, really, gameplay wise.
It was kind of where my head was. I think it would be a very nice game to play with your family. It's the kind of game I could see myself sitting down with the boy and his cousins and that at Christmas or something and helping them through it because it did hold your hand. The genre, the story itself might not be too young child suitable, massacring werewolves and all that kind of stuff. But the way it played, I thought really suited bringing people into that.
Yeah, you can't have that as a toy anyway because those miniatures are nose-insertingly small.
And my boy has previous.
Yeah, there you go, you see.
Does he now?
He shoved a rock up his nose when he was about 2.
Oh, God.
A pebble, sorry, not a rock. A pebble.
Good grief.
Oh, dear. And there's 2 expansions for it as well. And bizarrely, I only bought 1 expansion. I got the Kickstarter exclusive. And this is where it gets a bit weird. So I bought the Kickstarter exclusive and didn't buy the other expansion thinking, well, if I like the game, I'll buy that later. The irony is the retail expansion is available on the app to play. I've had this game about 6 months now, and the Kickstarter exclusive expansion isn't available to play yet. So I've got this box that I can't actually play.
That's annoying. Do they have a time scale over which they're going to, do they know when they're going to release it yet?
Well, I say that. It was supposed to be about November, so it's supposed to be about now.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be, incoming, so... But yes, that is Destinies from Lucky Duck Games. I would say we all really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'd like to get rid of the rest of that box, actually.
It sounds like a good story because whilst you can play them as individual games, it's a continuing story, isn't it? So you can each map
Yes,
follows on from the next.
It hints that the stories lead on. I don't know how they do.
Mm.
I'm assuming the app saves something, but it hints that the story carries on. So it suggested that decisions you make affect it, but whether that's how true that is, I don't know.
Okay. I'll watch this space.
Something to find out, I guess.
Well, just before Destinies, we played something slightly heavier. I played actually in Scotland with Alora when we were up on holiday a month or two ago now. And I've had this actually for ages because I pre-ordered it ahead of its release, and it's been one of those that you kind of look at it and go, oh, I need to learn the rules, and there's loads to learn. Let's just play something light that we know. But eventually, finally got it to sit down, and this is Tawantinsuyu, another complicated game set in some kind of South American location by David Turksey, beginning with the letter T. So this is the Taskinian Turksey letter T, complicated name that no one can say, beginning with T, heavy euro. So right up my street. Having played it and really enjoyed it with Alora, I thought I'd show it to you two as well. And thus began the learning. But it's not mechanically that difficult, as many games by David Turksey are not. However, there's usually a lot going on under the hood. So one thing kicks off, and it will kick off a chain of lots of other things that you need to work out. So it is full Turksey. There's no denying it. But ultimately, Tawantinsuyu is a game where some civilization based around a pentagonal pyramid are, I think, worshipping. I don't know the full blurb behind the game. I'm not going to lie, but basically, you have a high priest who's knocking around the top of this temple, and you, as followers, worshippers, minions, whatever word you want to use, are essentially performing actions to better yourselves, score points. Basically, worship a god, because there's a temple track, of course, and in doing so, you will gain points. You will gain statues, which can give you additional things, and you can go off and invade and conquer local lands to get you more power, abilities, etc., etc. That's the basic blurb. Mechanically, it is either draw 2 cards or put a meeple down. It's dead easy. Don't know why you all struggled.
Yeah.
However, yeah, it's the putting the meeple down bit that makes it quite hard, and of course very, very fun, because in true David Turksey style, there are a lot of ifs and buts about your meeple placement. So each space on the board, which is essentially the temple, has one of, I think it's 6 different god symbols. And in order to play your meeple on a god symbol, you either need to play a lump of gold to say, get out of my way, peasant, I'm going here, or play a matching god card, which has this symbol on it, allowing you to put your meeple down. But there are 5 different kinds of meeple, and some of them are coloured, which will match the board, and some of them aren't, and depending on whether your colour matches, gives you an extra icon, an extra action when you're putting your meeple down. And the actions that you can do are determined by where you put your meeple, because there are symbols next to each of these locations where you put your meeple that determine what actions you can do. So it might be like you can build a building, or you can harvest some potatoes, or you can get some rocks, or you can sell something in the shop, or weave a tapestry or something like that. Lots of different things, and each of these sort of feeds the engine, as it were. Broadly speaking, though, you need food to obviously feed your people. You need tapestries and resources to build shops and score points at the end, which will give you additional abilities in order to do all of these additional things. So they all feed each other. And the more meeples that are already down and surrounding where you put your meeple could mean that you get more goes. So if you put a meeple down that's blue, and there's already 2 other blue dudes essentially adjacent, then that will give you an additional two additional tasks, so you could do more of these things in one go. So what you're trying to do, obviously, is put your meeples down where other people have put their meeples down, so you can make the most of multiple actions and make your turn more efficient. Of course, it's never that easy. And of course, in doing that, you need to put your worker down, and of course, you need to feed your worker because he's travelling down this bloody great temple, which costs money, takes time. He's got to eat his lunch. He's got to take a pasty with him, and this is all based upon the position of the nutcase priest at the top who's shouting and squealing at him. The further down the temple you go, and the further round the temple from the priest you go, the more it costs you because essentially your worker's got to travel further. So again, you've got to work out what's more efficient. Do I put it on this area that I've basically limited myself to, or do I spunk all of my resources and go somewhere I actually need, but that's going to leave me crippled for the next few turns. So there's a lot going on.
Yes, you say that, but I think I cottoned onto this game very quick. I think my brain is just starting to learn the Turksy mindset that you did this, and it just cottoned on. I just went, oh, right, okay. Because it looked complicated at first, and I even looked at the rulebook before you came over and kind of went, oh, yeah, okay, this rulebook's not clicking with me. But like 3/4 of the way through you describing what was going on, I just went, oh, yeah, of course.
It's not as complicated as it reads.
No.
The most complicated bit is working out how much food you've got to pay to put your worker down.
Yeah, and even then,
that's about it.
I mean, to be fair, there is a player reference sheet. It is A4 in size. It is quite. It is
summary sheet in inverted commas.
It is a small font.
It is very small. It's longer than most rule books I play for some games, I tell you.
However, that has got a nice little diagram at the bottom, which basically says your chap is here. Where you place your worker will cost you this much based on and then all around here. But then it gets complicated because you get a discount if you built some steps. And even the summary gets like, what?
Yeah. There's a lot. Again, it's typically Turksy, you know. Whilst the basic action is very straightforward, there's a lot of things to consider amongst it. And of course, I'm not going to say it's an engine because it isn't, but you've got to think about almost chaining actions in a line to get what you want.
Yeah.
So you've got to think ahead quite a few steps. The problem is people can get in your way, and of course, that's the beauty of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think you need a term for it. We usually say the term engine builder, but I think it's classic worker placement, isn't it?
It is.
You're placing the worker, you're getting some resources, you're spending those resources to then do something with your next worker or your next, as you said, temple person that runs around and does stuff, and then there's a couple of other things that kind of twig into that, like. You can buy buildings, and then there's if you move your temple chap around the top, not your workers, your actual chap around the top, you can then kick off all the buildings, which can get you stuff. I only really twigged that 3/4 way through the game. I kind of thought, oh, hang on, I should be doing this more often.
Yes, yeah. The priest at the top is actually very, very useful, and of course you can recruit villagers or travellers from various sort of camps around the bottom. So at the end of your game, go, all right, I'm going to have him. He's going to be quite useful because I can pick up a different coloured worker, and if I put this particular coloured worker in this spot, it'll give me extra staff. And you've got to think ahead a good few turns, which is what I like personally. That's the kind of game I get my teeth stuck into. And the game length is actually determined by how many people are left in the village. So once you've hoovered up all the meeples, that's it, game over. Now, when Laura and I played it the first time, we didn't really appreciate that. So we played the longest game ever where, we just didn't take anybody from the village. And the game lasted about 4 hours for us when we first played it. And, of course, when I played it with you two, you're like, do you want to take a village? Yep, I'm having him. Bang, the game was out. Oh, for God's sake, will you stop doing that? I want 3 more goes.
But it did come to that interesting point, like most of these games, where it's like, any of us can end the game now. Who of us is ready? And I remember even saying, there's a good chance that Andy is 2 turns away from winning, so end the game now.
1 turn. Bastard.
Still beat me by 1 point, you bastard.
I still beat you by 1 point. See, it's your own fault. To be fair, had you not done that, I'd have beaten you by 29 points.
I know, but
it's less of a stuffing.
I've played with you enough to know that I need to terminate your chance at the board as quickly as possible.
Yes, you do.
But this was my first tea game.
Yes.
And do you know what? I was shitting bricks. I thought, I was like, I'm tired. My brain doesn't work as well as it used to anymore. I'm going to really struggle through this. But weirdly, Steve, I felt exactly how you said. Is the first few turns, I was like, okay, there's a lot going on here and stuff like that. About the third go around, I went, "Do you know what? Jettison some of this shit. Just chuck that stuff away."
Yeah.
I binned shops. That was my decision about my third go around. I went, "Do you know what? I'm not playing in that. Sod that off. I'm going to focus on, I think, tapestries and something else, right?" And I just went, I'll just go down that route.
You became a master weaver.
As soon as I started shedding stuff, I could start to get my head around what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I flipping enjoyed it. It was a really good game to play.
Yes.
And the mechanics of it were straightforward once you could see the wood for the trees. I think if you try and do everything at once, that's when it goes wrong. And I think that's what I was worried about. That's what I'd built up in my head. I'm going to have to do all of these things together to actually get a chance of winning. But you didn't have to. You could specialize, or you could focus.
Well, that's the beauty of a lot of David Turksey's games, is that you need to work out which bits of the game you're going to work on and which bits you're not. Yeah. Tekhenu is another one of his from the last couple of years. And that's exactly the same. You can't do everything. You just have to pick 3 or 4 of the 6 possible things that you want to work on and just focus on them. Because if you do all of them, you're boned. Yeah. You're not going to accomplish it. So it's exactly the same sort of idea.
We play it 3-player, which I think is a good number for these kind of games as well, 3 or 4. Because play it 2-player, you can feel like you're missing out. I think Tekhenu is a good example. Because I played Tekhenu with Amanda. That felt like, hang on, Amanda's getting loads of points for doing this, and I'm not getting loads of points for doing this. And it's like, well, do I carry on doing this, or do I pivot now to try and get the big points that are over there? But with 3 players, you get that not quite as much, because you're not trying to, I don't know what the word is, but you're not spread out quite as much, if that makes sense. Whereas in 2-player, you're trying to cover more bases. With 3, you kind of go, I'm not going to bother getting that because Andy's getting all that.
It spreads the pain a bit more. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It very much felt like we were all playing our own game. To an extent, it's like, you had gone down the shop route and a few other things, and I just hadn't gone anywhere near it. And, I think Andy had a couple of carpets or something like that. And I kind of went, okay, I'm going to go balls deep on carpets. And it just all felt like we'd found our own little way of playing it that was quite fun to watch. And it meant we got different scores at the ends as well. We weren't all earning from the same thing.
Yes, we all scored very differently.
Yeah.
That's very true. I mean, we all actually, I won, you came second by a point, and Steve wasn't that far behind.
No, he wasn't far behind, no.
So it was all pretty close, which does indicate a reasonably balanced game, which is good, because I basically became a potato farmer and and an invader, actually. I think I focused on basically spreading out and invading people to get actions and resources that way, and also smashing the shit out of the temple, which is the way forward in those games.
That became a realization quite late to me, I must admit. But once it was made, it as you say, it did help a lot.
No, I really enjoyed that game, and there was a point where it just clicked and just went, yeah, I'm in my element now. I'm playing a David Turksey complicated Euro game.
Yep, sign me up. Yeah, no, it's glad. I'm glad you both enjoyed it, because obviously I'm a Euro fan, and particularly David Turksey's games as well, because obviously we've got quite a few of his games. We like most of his games, and So,
well, it didn't feel dry at all. You know how you joke about dry, boring Euro. It wasn't
dry, boring Euros.
It wasn't dry. It wasn't boring. It was a nice, colourful game that I didn't really notice the passage of time. I enjoyed it. We played 3 or 4 hours, and it didn't feel like 3 or 4 hours that we'd spent on that at all.
It's about 2.5.
Was it 2.5? Well, there you go. I didn't even know. There's my point. It just got lost in it. I really, really enjoyed it.
It was about 2.5. About half an hour of that was basically going through the teach, and then the teach is mostly not about teaching the rules. It's about explaining what every single action on the board does, because there are so many different ones on there.
Yeah. But it all fit together really nicely. I think part of the fun and the nice design of the game is that not that you are restricted and which makes it really hard to make decisions. It's the fact that you are overwhelmed by the number of possibilities, which makes it harder.
Yes, that was what I think I was worried about initially, was the amount of things to learn, the amount of things to remember, which I have found in other games that we've played, which haven't been as complex and hard. I think there was so many, because they all had to happen for you to win. There was too much information to store and hold. Whereas with this, because they were all there was loads of things, but not everything had to happen to let you win. I felt I could find my way through it a lot easier. And I really love the accumulators. I have to admit, like, one carpet gets you, whatever it is, 1 point. When you get a 5 or 6 length carpet, joining them all together, I tell you what, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed finding matching my carpets up. It's like getting, different bits on there and different rewards for it and stuff. I thought it was a really...
You'll probably enjoy Teotihuacan then as well, because that's Daniel Toscini, although David Turksey's done a few of the expansions, and that's got masks. So you're basically set collecting masks instead of carpets, basically, and the same sort of idea. So the more individual masks you have, the more points you will score at the end of the game, and it ramps up quite quickly.
I think if I play this game, if I play Twati had whatever it's called, not Twati Hadouken, this one. What's this one?
Tawantinsuyu.
That one. Right, if I play this one again...
Taiwanese Shih Tzu.
Taiwanese Shih Tzu. If I play this one again, I'd probably go a different route. I just don't think it'd play out in the same way. And I think that's what's quite fun about it, is I don't think 2 plays will ever be the same.
This is why I love Heavy Euros, and this is why I get a little unimpressed with lighter... more basic games, because of exactly that reason, Sid. I can play a Heavy Euro a few times and I'll never have the same experience because there's so many different ways to play it, whereas in a lighter game I think I've seen most of it, so it holds less interest for me, which is why I prefer the heavier games, because I'm not gonna see all of that, because there are so many bloody strategies, there are so many different ways you can play it, and depending on who you play against as well, they're going to do something different, so you've got to accommodate for them. There's a lot more going on, and I think that's just why I prefer them. But I'm glad you liked it.
Very much so. Yeah,
it's a very good game.
I would quite happily play some more of the T games.
Well, you've come to the right place.
I know I've come to the right place, mate. I know I've come to the right place.
I genuinely think next you should probably play either Tekhenu, which is what Steve and I have just mentioned there, which is another one by David Turksey, or literally Teotihuacan. Yeah. I think you will probably enjoy that.
Do you know what? I think you should play Tekhenu first and then play Teotihuacan. Mainly because I think a lot of... Oh, I'm talking, bloody hell. I think a lot of people rate Teotihuacan as the best. So I think Tekhenu, you might want to play that first, so you don't play it after Teotihuacan and kind of go... I mean, it's not majorly different, because there is a lot of there's a lot of similarities between the two games, actually. I think Tekhenu and Teotihuacan have got more similarities than Tawantinsuyu. You
think? I would argue otherwise.
I would say they do, because they all have something which involves a corner of the board doing something, if that makes sense. It's just maybe it's just in my mind because it's a visual thing. I mean, you're still doing lots of different things in oh God, I can't even say the bloody name myself now. Tawantinsuyu, but they're things you have in your hand rather than things on the board, if that makes sense. So your shops and your carpets and your armies, they're all little minor things. Whereas in Tekhenu and Teotihuacan, they tend to be things on the boards. Like there's lots of different tracks, or there's the temple, or there's that whole pillar building and gods worshipping thing, and in Tekhenu.
I can see what you mean.
It's just maybe it's just my main. Just maybe they're exactly the same thing, and just my mind is just seeing them as different.
You have a point. I think mechanically, Tekhenu and Tawantinsuyu are probably more similar.
Okay.
From that point of view, I mean, obviously they're very different mechanics in the way one's dice placement, one's worker placement. But from that point of view, I think the two Turksey games are more similar from that point of view. But I can see what you mean in terms of stuff on the board.
Yeah,
Tekhenu is more like Teotihuacan. Yeah, okay, I can see where you're going with that. Yeah. Well, question for you actually, because we've talked about Tekhenu before. I think.
Yeah.
Which of those two do you prefer, Tawantinsuyu or Tekhenu? As they're both from Mr. Turksey. Big DVT.
That's a tough one, that. I think they're different enough that they're not as comparable. Ironically, although Tawantinsuyu looks more complicated, I think it's a more straightforward game than Tekhenu. Just because Tekhenu has a lot more options, I think, of what to do with your dice to get points.
It's a lot tighter.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less forgiving, I think.
Yes. With the whole balance of the dark and night and weighing up the scales of the dice means yes.
And there's a lot fewer actions overall in the game, because the game is driven by 16 rounds and that is it.
Yes.
Whereas Tawantinsuyu is a lot more flexible because it depends on what the players do.
I don't know. That's hard to call. That's really hard to call, that is.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think that from that point of view, they're actually very different games.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think I prefer Tawantinsuyu of the two of them, but they're both very good.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't turn either of them down.
None of us talk about Trismegistus.
That's only because we've played it the once. I want to play it again. I want to see if lightning strikes twice or whether I just got lucky and just had a good day, because I found Trismegistus really quite straightforward.
I think the game isn't that bad. I think the rule book for Trismegistus is so bad that it makes the game almost impossible to learn, which means it makes it difficult to play and get a strategy, if that makes sense. It's one of those
Probably
games.
fair.
I think you need to take that rule book and copy paste it into Google. A Google Doc and just reorder it. I think the rules are all there. I just think they're in the wrong place. But
Yeah,
yes. Anyway.
Yes, but then again, also that's Daniel Teschini, and of course that's Tolkien and Twati Hadouken. So having played both of those quite a lot, I'm looking at Trismegistus and thinking, this is familiar.
Yeah.
More complicated, but familiar.
Yeah.
So I had an advantage there. There's a lot going on in Trismegistus.
I think Trismegistus is the most complicated of that entire set.
Yeah, by a mile.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think if we put that in front of Sid, we might break him.
You probably will.
It broke me in Allura, didn't it?
Yes, it did. John just stared at it because he wasn't playing. He was doing something else at the time, but he just stared at it. I'm glad I'm not playing this.
Just make sure you play it in the morning if I'm playing.
And a lot of coffee. There's a lot going on in Trismegistus. But yeah, I like it. I liked it. But yeah, I can see what you mean. There's a lot going on.
Right, I'm going off topic here, so I'm just going to wind that up just now and just say that's Tawantinsuyu from Board and Dice.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the images for the new Vita Lacerda game, Andy? Weather Machine.
Weather Machine. Yes, I have. I am already riding that bus as hard as I can.
I'm not kidding. I'm looking at the pictures of the board. It looks beautiful.
Yep.
But I haven't got the faintest clue what on earth is going on. It looks like someone has just vomited meeples and icons onto a board, and then somebody's come along. Most likely Ian O'Toole has come round and then drawn.
It is Ian O'Toole, actually. Yeah, yes, it is.
And then drawn pretty pictures around them, because I cannot see how on earth this game is going to make any sense, but it looks beautiful and I'm intrigued.
Good, because I will be backing it. I actually follow Vital Lacerda on Instagram, so I've seen it for a little while now, so I'm aware of it, and he's basically obviously been play testing it and going through it to death and just showing lots and lots of pictures of it. So yes, I am familiar with his work.
I mean, to be fair, just Ian O'Toole involved just means it looks absolutely gorgeous anyway.
Yes.
Whether the game's any good, who knows?
I'm sure it will be. Mr. Lacerda seems to know what he's doing. I haven't played a bad one from him yet. Although, to be fair, I haven't actually played all of the ones I bought, 2 years ago, whatever it was, when I got that rather large cardboard box appearing with 5 of his heaviest games in there. Speaking of which, oh God, I got drunk with Sid a few weeks ago and I did something very silly.
You didn't kiss, did you?
No, we didn't.
No, it was over the Zoom
Virtual,
pub. We were on this.
thankfully.
It was virtual, yes, but I got the reminder of shipping or something for an Eagle Griffin game. For whatever it was.
I can sense where the story's going, but carry on.
I can't remember what it was for. But it was only supposed to be something small. But it says on the back of this, you might want to add Kanban EV. And I looked at it and went, I shouldn't, Sid. And I had about 6 pints at this point, so I was malleable.
I didn't even tell you to buy it. I went off.
No, you didn't.
I went off for
I'm
a
not
piss.
blaming you. I'm not blaming you. No, we got back from a piss. I said, Sid, I've done something very silly. Oops.
I thought you already owned Kanban EV.
I own Kanban, but not Kanban EV. And I haven't actually played Kanban properly yet. I play it on my own, but I've not played it with anybody else. But it's part of the nice, sexy Eagle Griffin games, and they're really nice.
They're about 100 quid, 120 quid each, aren't they? Anyway, right. Divert away. That's
Yes, Weather Machine does look lovely.
I've just looked
yes.
at it. What the
The question is it going to be heavier than on Mars? Because on Mars is hard work.
I love On Mars, but it's so complicated.
It almost looks like those player boards expand like those caravan awnings.
Yeah.
It probably does.
It probably does.
If it's made by Eagle Griffin, there's a good chance they've done something tasty with the design, because Eagle Griffin, they don't make a cheap game, but by Christ, they make a lovely game.
There's a lot of colours on there.
We will have to play a game of On Mars with you at some point because I've got that as well. I mean, it's gonna.
Yes.
We'd have to get you to prep and do some, homework because it's so. You think Tawantinsuyu was complicated? This is. Every single action requires 10 minutes explanation, and then you've got to tie it all together.
I have to admit, I have been finding when we have been playing that watching a little learn to play or finding a little something online for it makes my experience of the game a lot better.
Yes.
Good.
Because then when I'm sat there, you're then going through the teach, I'm actually understanding more of it, and it feels like I'm having a second go of it, and it's kind of learning in my own time. So I am trying now wherever I can to pre-learn a little bit.
One of the things I like about On Mars is actually thematically that one makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't call it Terraforming Mars because another board game exists with that name, but basically you're terraforming Mars. So all your actions make sense. You've got to fly between Mars and space station, for instance. So that's an action to go there. And then when you get there, you've got to build this. So that makes... So it's easier to teach than some other games because it's not abstracted. It's kind of like you're doing this. You need these resources to do this. So it's not too bad. But yeah, I got to admit, looking at videos... Getting something in a different media can help.
Yes.
So reading the rules and watching the video and then playing it for yourself, because it's different medias, I find it just sinks in and clicks a bit better.
I think what I find weirdly useful is just knowing the name of something, and then you mention, so like just knowing that there's a card that's called this. That when you're talking about it, I'm already thinking, okay, I know what that card is. Not necessarily what's on it, but know what you're talking about, and then it all slots together a bit quicker rather than you saying. You pick up a card from over here, and I'm like, okay, I'm looking over there while you're still talking, and I'm not listening to you now because I can only do one thing at a time. So my eyes were over there, so you were carrying on talking. I'm coming back, okay, now I'm coming back and catching them up. But I think it just sets the scene a bit easier for me. So I find it quite a nice way. And I find it less pressured then that when you're teaching. I feel like I'm more engaged with what you're trying to say.
Right then, we're going to close off today's with a bit of an RPG game review. Now,
it's been a while. It's been a
From the
while.
fans.
So I will be honest and say the rulebook was sent to me as a review copy from Free League. However, I think between us, we've spent about £400 buying extra copies of the rulebook and hardbound copies of all the expansions and the campaign and everything like that. And this game is called Coriolis. Now, what this is described as is 1001 Arabian Nights in space, though I don't think that really comes through massively, personally. It's a sci-fi game which basically has a region. It's called Coriolis, the Third Horizon. And this third horizon is one region of space which is locked off from the rest of humanity for whatever reasons. And you have two basic groups of peoples there. The first come, which are the people who'd expanded out for a bunch of portal gates to get there, and a group of people that arrived via a generation ship. And the generation, basically, the people who'd got there via the natural portals have kind of, I wouldn't say devolved a bit, but the technology is slightly lower level. The generation comes in with fancy technology and basically wants to lord it over, and they build a space station from the generation ship called the Coriolis and form a council, and it goes from there, basically. The aim of the game description, in my opinion, it's listed in the rulebook, is more like Firefly. You've got a crew. You're a crew of a ship. You have a ship. You're going to fly around and do things, and what you do is more or less entirely up to you. You can be a military crew going and shooting people down, being a bunch of mercs, guns for hire. You can be a bunch of thieves. You can be just traders going from port to port selling stuff. You can even be things like poets and artists and pilgrims. And all these are covered as like crew concepts and then character concepts and such like, allowing you a lot of freedom to do kind of whatever you want with that within this setting. And of course, it is a setting-based RPG. You know, like D&D is kind of very generic and can go into any setting and suggest you make your own. This is very much all built around this Third Horizon setting. Mechanically, it's based on Free League's Mutant Year Zero system, which is the same system in Forbidden Lands and Alien and lots of other games. which is you have a pool of d6 dice, which are your skill and your attribute added together. So if you're ranged combat, I think it's your wits and your ranged combat ability get added together, plus any bonuses from the weapon. You roll a dice. Every 6 is a success. So most skill tests only take 1 6 is needed to score a success. You can get a critical success by getting 3 6s, so it doesn't happen amazingly often. But in combat, if you get anything past 1 6, you can do special abilities. Now, the basic special ability is more damage, but you can also stress the opponent, which is basically suppressive fire, I think it's called, which reduces their mind points rather than the hit points, so you can try and basically knock out the enemy. But, and this is where this game gets most interesting, is you can spend successes to do critical hits. Yeah. And critical hits basically mean you roll on a D66 table. Number 1 is they've stubbed a toe. 66 is shot straight for the head, instant death. It's that kind of thing. If you've played Alien or something like that, it's similar. And I would actually say this game is a few years old now. So it's a bit flaky in a couple of places in that Alien feels like this rulebook matured.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because it's the same system, you can kind of backtrack and add some things in it, but you can see ways in which Alien takes the Coriolis rules and just slims them down a little bit more and makes them easier. So there's a couple of things in Coriolis are a little bit clunky in hindsight. I think if we played Coriolis first, we wouldn't have noticed, but we played Alien first. And so there are a couple of aspects of the rules where you kind of go, that's just a little bit more complex than it needed to be.
Or unclear.
Or unclear. Yes. Yeah. Or unclear. Oh, yeah. And sorry, that is actually one major criticism of it. There are rules that don't appear to be there. Rules for grenades. Grenades aren't explained at all.
You can buy grenades. Great.
How do I use them? Let's go to Alien.
We're not going to tell you that.
And work it out
we're not
from
gonna
Alien.
tell you that.
That seems to be our solution.
We worked backwards. We have also been playing, and the reason we mention this now is we've just finished the first book of the pre-written campaign for the campaign system, which is the Mercy of the Icons campaign. And what this campaign is a intrigue on a mass level. I mean, this makes kind of Game of Thrones intrigue levels look like child's play. It's all about all these factions vying for control of various aspects of the Third Horizon while something is going on in the background. However, the main thrust of the story is basically, part of the story is that mystic powers have evolved, so people have started to get like telekinesis and things like that, and that's all been linked to these things called the emissaries, which are supposed to be godlike beings or avatars of the gods of this setting. And the whole story is based around one of these emissaries being kidnapped, and the players finding out why, trying to hunt down and investigate why they've been kidnapped and rescue them. And it's a massive story. It's 2 adventures, it calls it. Each one split up into 3 acts each, sorry. And for us, we play for about 2.5, 3 hours. We were averaging 2 to 3 sessions per act. So there's a hell of a lot of content there. And there's lots of ways in which you can expand that even further. And I would just like to say, before I hand over the mic to you guys, this campaign has been amazing.
Yes, it has.
I do wonder whether some of it is just the fact that we as role players have got to our peak role playing or got together and I've done my planning right. But this has got to be the best role playing experience I've had since we played Alien for the first time.
It's been king awesome.
It's unbelievable. It is absolutely
really has
amazing.
Been so good.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a combination of the setting is really well done. I mean, it feels like it's been slightly influenced by things like Dune.
Yes.
And slightly, I mean massively. But it's very different technology, of course. But I agree. The group of players we've got, everyone's written a really great character, or more than one character in some people's cases. Don't cry,
Don't make
Sid.
me cry.
All the backstories seem to have fed the story and have been woven in really, really well. And you've done a great job with that, Steve. You really have. Because not only is the intrigue in the game, but you've woven in character in backstory into that intrigue to keep us like, oh, you bastard, and it's been perfect for end of session cliffhangers and stuff, which has just kept the ball rolling, kept the momentum going, kept the enthusiasm
and
high.
I would actually say the background stuff is intended to be part of the game, because one of the things you get XP for at the end of a session is learning something new about one of your crewmates. So it works best if you are a bunch of shady bastards thrown together, for some mutual goal and not knowing who's who. It really does want to do it. It's like I said, Firefly is a good example, and you use Dune, and Dune is a massive influence, but it feels like Mass Effect as well.
Yes.
The Coriolis station being the main station on Mass Effect, and all these races, but it's not races and everyone's human on this, but all these different factions vying over something, and then the big bad coming.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, because the one of the big factors in the game, I don't think you mentioned, is this existence known as the dark between the stars. So you jump through space through these warp gates, or these jump gates, and you have to do it essentially in stasis, like as if you're in, like in Alien and lots of other sort of sci-fi things, because if you stayed awake, you'd be driven mad. So it's a little bit like Event Horizon. So if you go through that portal and you come back and, bad shit's happened to you, it's almost like that. So there's this threat of something coming from the dark between the stars in whatever form that takes. And it's delightfully mysterious and just slightly vague enough to make you actually be quite scared of it.
And the way mechanically that comes through, sorry, Sid, I'll just mention this quickly. The Mutant Year Zero games all run on this system that you can re-roll your dice. So every game runs it slightly differently. So in Alien, for instance, we'll keep referring to that, you add stress the more you re-roll. With this one, you pray to the icons, which is basically you praying to the gods for a re-roll. And every time you do that, I, as a GM, get a darkness point. And darkness points are basically things. There'll be things, if you're doing a pre-written adventure, there'll be things that say you can spend darkness points to do this, like lay traps or things like that. Or it will do things like, I spend a darkness point and you run out of ammunition. I spend 3 darkness points and the enemy gets backup during this combat. Things like that, and like things like some of the enemies' attacks, like for instance, the enemies can do crits against you, but I have to spend darkness points for them to do a crit. I can't just spend it like normal. And as a GM, I find that tool absolutely mesmerizing and brilliant, because it's where the balance comes in. Like if you're playing D&D, for instance, I'd choose if I want to put backup in or not. If I want the enemy to have like 10 goblins turn up, that's up to me. Whereas in Coriolis, I've got to spend darkness points to do that, which means it only happens if you guys are praying to the icons and re-rolling all the time. So this is really cool gambling of you going, well, I can re-roll to get a better success, but if I do, I'm giving Steve more ammunition to make pain for us later in the game.
It's like the Star Trek RPG in that sense, where you have momentum as players, but if you do something bad, you give the DM threat, and they can spend it in a similar way. So there's this wonderful balance of how much do you really want to succeed? Shit, we really have to get this done. I don't get a choice. I'm going to have to re-roll. And then there's the look of glee and delight on the GM's face as you give him 2 darkness points.
But I think you've touched on it, Steve, is kind of what I was going to say earlier. It is that makes it a far more cooperative table. I don't think I see you in the GM role I see you in a D&D game. Because our actions, our praying and that kind of stuff influences our game directly by either letting us reroll or whatever. But equally, it gives you opportunity to change our story, to change. It feels like you're part of our story now, whereas you're not just telling it, which D&D sometimes can feel very much, like you said, I could just drag in a dozen goblins or I can do this, and it's just arbitrary decision making. Whereas here, it feels like you're playing within a set of rules as well, in the same way that we're playing within a set of rules. And I think one of the things that works for us in Coriolis that probably doesn't work so much in other games is we're all telling the story and we're bouncing off each other really, really well. So we've fed you some backstory. You've given us a few hooks back. Everyone on that table has got onto it, and it's just fantastic. I agree with you. I haven't felt like this about a game since probably that first cinematic of Alien we played. which completely turned my RPGing world on its head. This has done it again, but it's done it for a year, not 2 sessions.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the character interaction we've got as players and again as characters is just absolutely wonderful. You know, we feel each other's characters now. I mean, and not just our own characters, but we give a shit about the other characters as well. You know, as you said, Sid, we are a team. We are working together, despite all the bad shit happening in the background. It's like, you know, when unfortunately Kamina bought it, doing something heroic but stupid.
Yep.
You know, we all and unfortunately she did it right in front of a loaded gun aimed right at her. But it was in the spirit of the game, and that was good. But we all we were all as a team absolutely stunned and shocked when unfortunately she did meet a very sticky end. But like, what the fuck do we do now?
That's one thing I would say, actually, from a rules point of view. It is potentially deadly for the players, because I can spend darkness points to get these crits, and on the roll of a dice, I can insta-kill a player. And it feels, when you do it as a GM, it feels so mean. Because, you know, like, as in D&D, we'll use D&D as the example, you slowly wear down players. You know, it takes a while to, you know, it's actually difficult to kill a player character in D&D.
It really is. Infuriatingly so, actually.
In this, it's just like, I've just spent 1 darkness point out of my pool of 12, and boom, I've rolled 64. Oops.
Sorry.
Yeah, but right, that bit. Okay, so first thing is, that was probably one of the best sessions ever for me, right? Where my character did buy the farm. And it was the end of an act, wasn't it? So it felt like a season finale on a TV show, and everything just played out brilliantly. I was like, she dies, and we fade to black. And then the next session we start the next. And it was an emotional roller coaster for me as a player. I mean, I was fucking all over the shop. I was like, what the fuck? It's just a character, for goodness sake. But it's what we said earlier about how invested we all are. And when Dan's character had a similar problem dying, she, I think, felt the same way. And it really connected us as a team with how we played our story. And those events happening, we didn't... And maybe at the time I felt it was like, this is quite ouchy. But actually, I feel it's made our story better. I think we've woven it in. Everyone's picked up the threads of it. We've brought new characters in. Those new characters have had difficulty, perhaps, in slotting into the game. But as time has gone on, as sessions have gone on, we almost feel like we're rebuilding those relationships and the characters, and it's changed slightly. And it's you could write. I think we could write a TV show off this. It does feel like that kind of epicness of how we're playing it out.
I agree.
Which I don't think I've got anywhere else. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fun, brilliant.
Yeah, it really truly is. I've been absolutely loving it. Really, it's. I really look forward to it as well. You know, it's not just we're playing, we go through the motions. You know, we really enjoy it and we move on. It's right. When are we playing next? When are we playing next? And then at the end of the session, none of us get to sleep till 3 a.m. because we're still excited and jumping up and down. So Fridays is like, you've been drinking, Andy? No, I just didn't get any sleep.
No, I just need to wait. I was too buzzing after we were playing.
Yeah,
but I think the story as well. I mean, Mercy the Icons trilogy, as it's going to be, it's so engaging, and it's just beautifully written. And to see it from our angle is only seeing one view. Obviously, Steve, you're seeing the more complex environment and then the future. But it is literally like trying to watch The Expanse. I think it's probably a nice, good example.
I was about to say it's got elements of The Expanse. It's got elements in it because you've got this rich and poor and everything spread out. Yeah,
all that
definitely.
kind of stuff. And it's epic as a storyline. And to have that written 4 or 5, obviously Expanse books have been around, but to kind of almost have that written down 4 or 5 years ago when this came out, it's just brilliant. It's such a good story.
And I would say as well, it's worth saying from a Jim's point of view, it's not set, although there are criticisms of the books that they were quite railroady, and I disagree with that. Because we've only run Emissary Lost, which is part 1 of the Mercy Icons campaign, and a lot of the reviews you'll see online will say that it's really railroaded, the players have to go this order. And although there are points where the book kind of assumes you're going to do something, there'll be a sidebar which says, of course, your players probably won't do this. So here's some things you might want to consider. And it does a whole thing which I found that the D&D campaigns didn't do, which it kind of acknowledges your players are not going to go exactly to how the book thinks they are.
That's really good.
And although it doesn't give you the answers for everything, it at least acknowledges and says, like at the beginning, there's usually a little sentence at the beginning that says, just look, this isn't a railroad campaign. You might need to do some work to change some things. The second book even makes a big point and says, look, this is a really complex story. Your players are not going to work out everything. So work out what you think are the important parts of the story to your players and concentrate on them. And then they can hear about the other things as kind of background information.
Sky News comes on in the background.
Well,
yeah.
But
it's a really good way of doing it.
Coriolis' newsfeed little thing, that helped us in a few occasions. It gave us a few little pokes in the right direction. It gave us a bit of information that we might have missed, a bit of exposition dump. It's really, at least they acknowledge that we are players and we won't necessarily do what people expect us to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect. There are places where the description, especially in the art and the campaign, kind of misses things out. It does that whole thing that Forbidden Lands did when we reviewed that, Andy. And it has that same problem where what it does is it explains locations, explains characters, and then explains events. And there's a point, which is really, really difficult to get your head around in the middle of a session because you want the location, the character, and the event to all be together rather than having to skip through 3 different pages.
It's a pain in the arse, that. The number of times I fell foul of that is...
Yeah.
Because, oh shit, I've got to retcon that because that should have happened and I haven't gone that forward in the book. And because they're only a wee book, I know exactly what you mean.
These are bigger books, but it has exactly the same problem. The other problem is it sometimes forgets that you might not know something. Like, for instance, I'm going to give a perfect example. One of the enemies had homing bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
And that's why they were shooting. That's why they were doing so much damage. Anyway, the main core rulebook mentions homing bullets, but does not provide rules for them. It says you can buy homing bullets for this gun.
Boom!
There are no rules in the core rulebook for it. The campaign book has the homing bullets turn up twice. The first instance just says these troops are fitted with homing bullets. The second instance, 100 pages later, explains how they work.
Oh, that's really bad.
And it's just like, oh.
Do you know what's happened there? The author's gone, I should read these. They're not in the main rulebook. Shit.
I think, that I think is just, if you look at how Free League's evolved, and I think this is something I've noticed more since we've got, I'm bought in. Frankly, Free League release something, I throw money at them right at the moment.
Yeah.
We're all on that bus, mate.
But if you look at how they've developed, and I see it in Coriolis, and I see it different in Alien, I see it different in Forbidden Lands, and now with Twilight 2000, you can see how much more mature they've got in their review, in their quality processes throughout the book. And I think by now bringing in play testing and beta testing and alpha PDFs and all that kind of stuff, it's getting better and better and better.
Definitely, yeah.
So much more quickly. And I think that's impressive itself because it's an acknowledgement of these people can help us make our book better. And they're not to be seen as the great unwashed who just buy the book and pay us money. And if Wizards could learn from that, for example, some of the comments you made about their campaigns and assuming that players are just automatons that will do kind of what somebody's written them to do. That is
really bad examples.
It's quite actually disrespectful in a way because it's saying you're in an RPG world and you can do what you want. Oh, but by the way, if you haven't done exactly what we've written, then your story doesn't work, which is kind of a bit. Anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But I think Coriolis is due an update. It feels like it needs a little bit of a reprint and a kind of a freshen up. But there are other problems. I've got one big problem with Coriolis.
Here we go.
I have got one big problem, and it's only one problem, and it is character death. I think character death in Coriolis is devastating for the player. It really is. Not in terms of, it's lots of reasons. It's devastating emotionally. I don't want to go through that again. Well, I do because it was awesome, but I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel about it. It did, yeah, I did go through grief. But I think the problem I have with character death is how it almost feels like it punishes the player for doing what the game is asking them to do. And it's purely because of the way the XP spend works. And I think in future games, in later games where the same, campaigns or character death happen, Free League handle it slightly better. But I think in Coriolis, the way it handles is if you die as a character, you lose everything your character had. So any experience they've built up, any experience they've earned but not yet spent, for example, is lost. Yet when you look at how you gain experience, one of the ways to gain experience is to take risks or put yourself in positions where you might die or you might further your situation. So it wants you to take these risks, but then if you die, you reset your character to naught. Your player, everything is gone. You're building up a very...
It feels like the player should get the XP, not the character, is what you're saying.
It's exactly what I'm saying. And I think that's what Alien does, for example. I've harked back to Alien.
It's unclear.
It's unclear in Alien, and we house ruled it and said it's definitely the player that gets those XP.
But I think that comes back to how the cinematics do it, because the cinematics allow the player to keep their story points. So there is a premise by which it kind of makes sense, because...
Though, to be fair, the cinematics that we've played in Alien, the chances are your character's going to die pretty bloody quickly, so the XP is less of a problem.
Well, there is no XP in the cinematics. It is all story points. But what I think I'm getting at is that if we want to encourage people to RP, and by doing that we give them the rewards through the XP system, to then remove all of that reward just because the character they had has died punishes the player. And players can then step back from that and say, actually, I'm not going to put my character into that risky position because I can lose them, and therefore I'm put back. And I think it's a really small thing, but I think where I saw it as a real shortcoming of the game is how the game is already unbalanced. Players and different skills and different characters can become quite OP in one direction versus another, and we already have quite a mixed group anyway. But when you then lose a mature character, that unbalance is shifted even more so. Because you've effectively got level 10 characters playing with a level 1 character, if you take the D&D example. So you've got a really squishy person, potentially.
The difference in skill levels isn't that great, I don't think. I think that's one of the beauties of this Year Zero system. It's not like level 10 versus level 1. It's more like you've got like a much narrower band,
because of how the skills points are spent, you're right. Yeah. But it is kind of like it's probably not quite the right example. It's more that the capabilities of the characters you might be with, are far greater than you as a puny weakling. And I found that a very difficult thing to come over. And it took me good 3 or 4 sessions, plus a couple of late night whiskies with Andy to clear my head on how I'm going to proceed with that game. But
it's therapeutic.
But I'm glad I went through it. I at one point I was borderline ready to walk because of that, because I just felt like my new character couldn't re-engage with the story. And then there was a bit of things that we worked on, we sorted through, and now I get through it, I'm saying, yeah, okay, that's fine, but I still feel like the way we did the Alien XP system feels better. It feels like it allows a character to at least keep their unspent XP. I think we ruled it in Alien that if you've used your XP, then it's gone. All that character buffing you've done is gone, but you still get XP for the things you did in this session. Because otherwise, when my character died, I felt like this should be a high scoring session for me. If it all gone well, I would have scored quite good in XP, but the way it played out, it didn't. But that's my only criticism of the whole thing, and it's minor. It really is minor, because I went through it and I felt like it's shite, but then I actually realised, no, it's not shite. It's just you need to put your mind in a different place and just accept that's how you have to do it. And actually, spinning up a new character now, I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, it's
Do you
fun,
know what I mean?
There's so many possibilities.
It's taken it's taken me a few sessions to get there, but I'm really quite happy with it. And it's kind of quite nice to play 2 characters in the same story, almost. Maybe I'll have a third character at the end of the next session. Who knows? But it is quite good fun.
Yeah, it needs to happen to you as a player, I think, as an RP in any game. I think character death is something you need to deal with, because once you've got through that, once you've popped your cherry, as it were, or once your cherry's been popped, or possibly even your head has been popped. It's tough to deal with, but once you've gone through it, you can get over it, and I think it does make you a better player. Actually,
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think D&D provides too much of a bubble of protection around your players, and I think the way that Alien, Coriolis, Forbidden Lands all do, they add the element of threat. We said it before on the podcast. It's if you're not risking anything, then frankly you're probably not trying hard enough. That's how I'm now playing.
Absolutely agree.
Coriolis.
Yes. Kick doors down. Yeah. Poke the beast.
And sometimes just cheesing it is an acceptable answer to the problem.
Absolutely right.
Not everything needs to be fought. Not everything needs to be talked down. Just run the away. It's just it's just brilliant. It really is. I mean, it's the one session now that we have that I would really struggle to not want and play. It really is.
It has one further downside. It clashes with my Thursday night board gaming in Bewdley. But Coriolis wins. Hands down.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant.
Right then, I think that outpouring of love for Coriolis draws this episode to a close.
Yes, I shall clean up my spooge.
Oh, we should just say, you can just buy the books to read, by the way.
Because
the amount of lore, the amount of artwork, I mean, Andy's fallen in love with an NPC, for example.
Well, yeah, okay. I suppose that's the polite way of putting it.
It's not his character that's in love with her, it's Andy that's in love with her.
There may be a slight bit of projection. Andy might have a thing for redheads,
But no, it's a beautiful book. It really is.
It is. It really is.
I can't spoil anything, but book 2 has got such a phenomenal ending. I think the ending of book 2 is much better than the ending of book 1. And you couldn't sleep after the end of book 1.
Oh, God damn it.
I think you will need to buy some calms pills or something.
Drink myself into a stupor, I think.
Bang. Just nail a bottle of single malt as we play that. Bang. Late night Zoom pub for that session.
Yeah, we'll need that.
So, thank you very much for listening. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you enjoyed this, please give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. You can find us all over the internet. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Board Game Geek Guild 2726. Just look for Polyhedron Collider. So, until next time, happy gaming.
Tatty bye.
Cheerio.